Hello, Grace.
Hello, Lainey.
We're live and we're here for our first well not our I guess our first almost of the season where we're starting off with a amazing list of authors for writers to watch. Hello everyone. Thanks for watching. I'm Lainey Mays. And I'm the assistant manager of Library Love Fest, the library marketing team at HarperCollins.
And I'm Grace Caternillo, the library marketing coordinator. And we're back after what we took a month off or so, sipping Mai Tais. Well, I wasn't, but maybe Lainey was. I don't know.
Sure, we'll go with that. Not attending a conference and getting
Right,
that
right.
all going. Maybe a little of both. Yeah, we're very excited to be here and we're back with a great episode. Today, you're going to hear from four amazing authors. We have Mitch Albom, author of Twice, coming out August 7th. We have Akwaeke Emezi, author of Son of the Morning. That book is coming November 4th. Catherine Newman, author of Wreck, the book is coming October 28th. And we have Gilly Macmillan, the Burning Library author, coming November 18th. So that's what you're going to hear from today. In just a minute, we're going to introduce our authors and they're going to tell us all about their upcoming titles. All of those books are available as e-galleys. And if you're on Crowdcast, you know you get e-galley access very early. So be sure to sign up there so you can get the e-galleys for each upcoming event. And I want to tell you before we get on that we're going to stay to the end. We're going to have some housekeeping and a little bit of team updates. So be sure to stay to at the end and we'll go over all of that. But now I think we should get going into the books. We're very excited. So Grace, what do you say? Let's go. Anything you want to add?
Say we do it. Thanks all for being here.
Awesome. Okay, so I'm going to start and I'm going to welcome Mitch Albom on screen.
Hi,
Hello. Thank you so much for being here. I know we've gotten so many people who are so excited to hear from you and congrats on the new book. Um,
thanks.
yeah,
Well, thanks for having me, and I'm happy to be here with my fellow authors there, who you'll hear from, I guess, after me. Although I do want to correct something you said. You said it comes out August 7th, which would be Thursday.
I'm so
That
sorry.
really scared the hell out of me because I already have plans for Thursday, and they don't include releasing a book.
I'm sorry,
So,
October 7th. I'm so sorry.
October 7th. Oh, so then I'm good on that. That's what I
Yes.
figured it was going to be. Yeah.
I'm not here to give you any bad, scary news. I just need to read better. I'm so sorry.
Sorry.
That was my mistake. Thank you so much for
So,
correcting
no
me.
problem.
So I'm going to do a bio.
I have a galley of Twice here
Yeah,
that was been sent to me, a box of them. So
put that
if
dated.
you want me to just talk about it a little bit?
Well, I wanted to do your bio. I mean, not that
Oh,
you really need to be introduced, but I would like
sure.
to set it up if that's okay with the correct date of October 7th on sale. Twice is the title. Mitch Albom is the award-winning playwright, screenwriter, and author whose works include several #1 New York Times bestsellers, such as Tuesdays with Morrie, the best-selling memoir of all time. His books have been made into acclaimed films for television through his work at the Detroit Free Press, and um, through his work at the Detroit Free Press, he was inducted into the National Sports Media Association and Michigan Sports Halls of Fame, and is a recipient of the 2010 Red Smith Award for Lifetime Achievement. He founded and oversees a consortium of 9 different charitable operations in his hometown of Detroit, including a nonprofit dessert shop and food product line to fund programs for Detroit's most underserved citizens. Also operates an orphanage in Port-au-Prince, Haiti, which you visit monthly, and Twice will be released October 7th from Harper. Thank you, and I can't wait to hear more.
Well, thanks. So yeah, this is my new upcoming book, Twice, and it follows a pretty simple concept. It's about a guy who, as a child, discovers that he has the magical ability to do everything in his life twice. He can go back and undo anything and get a second crack at it. The caveat is that he has to live with the consequences of the second try. If the second try turns out to be worse than the first, there's nothing he can do about it. And so he goes through his childhood, basically correcting his mistakes, as we probably all would in adolescence. When something embarrassing happen, he just goes back and tries to fix it, misses the shot at the end of the game, goes back, makes the shot. And he's kind of cruising along in his life like this. And then as he gets a little older, he falls in love, and he finds out from a particular character in the book that there's one exception to the rule of his power. It doesn't work with love. In fact, if you go back and try somebody else, the person who loved you in the first version can never love you again. They'll be in the world, they'll know you, but they just will never have that same feeling for you. And of course, he thinks he finds the right one, and he's, making a life with her, and then his eye starts to wander a little bit, and circumstances start to change, and he has to make that very fateful decision. Is he going to test this theory of this power? And, I wrote it for several reasons. One, I'm a little bit different, I guess, than some authors who kind of come up with plots or let their characters take them where they're going to go or whatever. With me, I always try to find a concept that I think interests me or might interest other people, and then I try to create a story around it. And I think as we all get older, one of the concepts that starts to become bigger and bigger on the horizon is, would I have done anything differently? Would I have done it better if I did it differently? And wouldn't I have liked to have had a second chance at doing something? So I tried to create a story where that was actually a possibility, and then there was a consequence that you had to pay for that magical power. And you had to sort of choose if the world really was going to be better if you did it over again or not. And I also wanted to do a love story. I have in all of my books, all my novels, there's always a love story element. There was certainly a love story element in The Five People You Meet in Heaven. There was certainly a love story element even in my most recent one, which was set during the Holocaust, The Little Liar. But it was never the theme of the book. This is really a love story. This is if this is as close as I'm going to ever get to doing a romance book, or being a romance writer. The theme of this is love, and how it's a very unique emotion and isn't to be trifled with, even with magic. And so it gave me an opportunity to really, really dive deeply into this love story between these two characters. And the protagonist, whose name is Alfie, who gets this power when he's young, and his love interest, whose name is Gianna, who he meets when he's a little boy and then re-meets again. And it seems like they're fated to be together. And I think all the readers will feel that they're fated to be together, but he makes this kind of fateful decision halfway through, and then you're kind of rooting for them to see if they can get back together again. It has a very uplifting ending. I think I was coming off of The Little Liar. Those of you who might be familiar with that book, I'm very proud of that book, and I worked really, really hard on a good historical fiction novel, but it took a lot out of me. It was set during a very grim time, and there were a lot of things that I had to write that I don't think anybody wants to write. Scenes about people being slaughtered and killed and whatever. And so when I was finished with it, I was really in the mood to just do something a little bit lighter. And I had been sitting on this concept for a while, and so I said, "All right, Kath, I'm going to move this one to the front of the line." And I think it came out very, very much like I wanted it to come out. And the early readers, or the people who have read it, have gobbled it up very quickly. It's a quick read. It's just a tad under 300 little pages. All my books are little, which, by the way, in case you're ever wondering in the library why my books have to have like the little shelf, it's because of Tuesdays with Morrie. Because when I wrote Tuesdays with Morrie, it was contracted to be a 300 something page book, but I was so green, I'd never really written anything like that. So I just did it on a typewriter with triple spacing between the lines. And when I wrote very tightly, and I just said what I wanted to say, and I got to like 300 pages. I said, well, this is good because I said what I wanted to say, and it's 300 pages. And I sent it in, and then when they paginated it, they called me and they said, we got a problem. And I said, what's the problem? And they said, it's this book's only like 160 pages long. And I said, well, that's all I got, it's the whole story. And so they said, we'll just make it a little book. And they made Tuesdays with Morrie, this little book, so that it wouldn't look like a comic book if it was the regular size. And then when it, did what it did, which was a total surprise to me, Then when they came back to me the next time, they said, "Well, all your books should be that size." And so now I am totally relegated to the small size book. But even at the small size, it's a tad under 300 pages. So it reads quickly, and I think a lot of people will project themselves into it. What would I have done differently? Would I trade? The real question is, would I trade what I've learned from my mistakes for the ability to not have made those mistakes? And I think that's the question we all have to sort of ask ourselves. So it's a book for romantics. It's a book for people who like those magical kinds of stories about what if, what if. And it's a book for people who like my kind of uplifting, sort of inspirational stories. And I hope that a lot of people take it out of the library.
Thank you. Yeah. I mean, maybe small in page number, as you're saying, but packs a punch. I was thinking about it so much and highlighting things. There are beautiful words in here. I think, maybe later we can talk a little bit about the other kind of love story about a mother and a child. I thought that was lovely to have that sprinkled out throughout it as well. But they're beautiful words. So thank you so much. Yeah.
Sure, thank you.
Yeah. Okay. Well, we're gonna put you in the virtual green room, but we're gonna bring you back for some questions. So thank you for sharing.
All right. And I am very excited to introduce Akwaeke Emezi. Hello, how are you?
Hello, I'm wonderful, thank you. How are you doing?
Doing great. Thank you for being here. I'm so excited to talk to you about Son of the Morning, which look how beautiful that deluxe edition is. Oh,
He's a cutie pie.
yeah, for sure. That's obviously the exterior, but it also has the stenciled edges, colored end papers, and then like this jacket that reveals an alternate case cover illustration when removed. So just wanted to call that out because it's gorgeous. Um, so before I have you talk about Son of the Morning, I'm just going to read a quick bio. Akwaeke is a writer and artist using storytelling to center queer, indigenous, Black realities and radical possibilities. They are the author of 9 books. This is their 10th, including You Made a Fool of Death with Your Beauty, Pet, Freshwater, and many more. They've been a finalist for the National Book Award for Young People's Literature, the Dylan Thomas Award, the Los Angeles Times Book Prize, the Penn Gene Stein Award, and I could keep going. And they were selected as a 5 under 35 honoree by the National Book Foundation and featured on a Time cover as a next generation leader. And they are based in liminal spaces. So again, thank you for being here. And I'm gonna pass it right off to you to start telling everybody about Son of the Morning.
Of course, thank you so much for having me. So Son of the Morning is a paranormal romance, and it's been really fun. It was really fun for me to write because I love fantasy as a genre and I love romance, and paranormal romance was like those two colliding. Um, Originally, it was absolutely meant to be a novella. I was working on a completely different book, and I got this idea of a love story between the devil and a black girl in the American South. And thinking of the devil as like, the devil that made a deal, that makes the deals at the crossroads and all of that. And I was like, okay, I'll just pause on this other book and dash out a quick novella. And 100,000 words later, I realized that I was stuck with a novel. And for me, Son of the Morning is, I mean, obviously it's a love story, right? But it's also, I think, a love letter to like the Black American South. I first emigrated to the United States at 16, and I was like dropped into a college in Appalachia, of all places. And it was the Black American South that like took me in. I eventually made a home in New Orleans, in Louisiana. And so I wanted to write something that, paid homage to Black Southern Gothic, movies like Eve's Bayou or Daughters of the Dust, but in a book with the devil in a contemporary context. And so the main character is called Galilee Kincaid. She comes from this matrilineal line of Black women who have all kinds of abilities. And she's living with this fear of becoming as powerful as she could be. And then she meets the devil, who's topside on earth, trying to figure out what's going wrong with one of his gates into hell. And it's the first time she's really meeting someone who delights in how terrifying she could be. And her family obviously is against it. His princes of hell are against it. And so they've got like, this love, this insta love, to be fair, that they are, this attraction that they're like, determined to pursue because in each other they're seeing something that's worth, fighting for. Um, I don't believe in the devil personally, but I do believe that multiple realities can exist at once. And I believe in the devil as a character, like a gloriously misunderstood and maligned character. I was raised in a very Catholic lineage. Like my grandmother's brother was an archbishop, very Catholic, Carmelite nuns in the family Catholic. And I always like this idea that, at the end of the day, the devil is really just working a managerial position for God. So I feel like this book is, a mix of that, of like the theology of that, a mix of the Black American South. But like I said, it's a love story, and it's a love story about a love that allows you to be as terrifying as you need to be, and also about the belief that like it's never too late to change, even if you feel as damned as the devil.
I love that. It was a hell of a ride. I mean that pun with my whole chest. And I was thinking when Mitch was talking, his book is kind of like What If, where yours is kind of Why Choose. And
Yes,
I
I forgot
really
about that bit. That's
yes, and I do think people will find that really enticing if you want to speak about that like briefly.
oh, for sure. So I love a good proper love triangle, not like a love angle where like the third line doesn't actually connect. And this doesn't even count as a spoiler because it's on the cover. So you've got like Galilee and Lucifer on the cover, and then you've got one of his princes of hell, Leviathan, on the back. Almost everyone I write is like queer or bisexual or something. So there's another love story going on, and it's a proper love triangle, which I think gives it a nice amount of messiness, a touch of enemies to lovers happening as well. And I hope the readers will really enjoy it.
Yes, I mean, somebody in the chat just said that Son of the Morning is one of their favorite books of the year. So I just wanted to call that out. People are loving it. And thank you so much. I am gonna put you back in the green room and welcome on Catherine. Hello. I'm so excited you're here today. Thank you.
Thanks for having me.
Always a joy to talk to you and see you again after Lainey said what it's been like a month since we saw you.
A long month.
It's been a lot has happened in a month. So I'm gonna read your bio and then we'll talk about Rec, which
Okay, great.
loved. So Catherine Newman is a New York Times bestselling author of the memoirs Catastrophic Happiness and Waiting for Birdie, a middle grade novel, a kid's craft book, and more, plus the novels We All Want Impossible Things and Sandwich. Her books have been translated into a dozen languages. She has been a regular contributor to the New York Times, Real Simple, O, the Oprah Magazine, Cup of Joe, and many other publications. She writes Crone Sandwich on Substack, which I'm subscribed to and read religiously, and there's always cat photos in there, so something to think about. And she lives in Amherst, Massachusetts. So I know everyone's very excited to hear from you. So I'm gonna have you get right into Rec.
Okay, thanks so much, Grace. So I wrote Sandwich, which the narrator of Sandwich was a woman named Rocky who was on vacation with her young adult kids and her aging parents. And that book took place just in a week on Cape Cod. And then it turned out Rocky had more to say. Not shocking if you've read Sandwich. Rocky has a lot to say. She has many, many feelings about everything. So I started writing this book, Rec, and I wasn't sure it was going to be the same characters, but just between us, I don't know how many of you there are, this small group. those characters insisted on being the characters in Rec. And so I had to call my agent and my HarperCollins editor and be like, this is going to be the same characters. Like it has to be. They keep insisting on themselves. So in Rec, the main character, Rocky, is back at home in Western Massachusetts. She lives with her longtime husband, Nick. Her daughter, Willa, has moved back home. She's applying to grad school, working at a lab. Her widowed father is living with them. And her son and his wife live in New York City. And the book tracks these two very small happenings. It's not majorly plot driven. On the one hand, Rocky has a rash on one of her arms that is spreading a little, and her dermatologist sends her to another doctor, sends her to another doctor, and this diagnostic mystery kind of blooms into a full-blown kind of diagnostic crisis. And that's one part of the story. The other part of the story is there's an accident in her town, and a kid that her kids went to high school with is killed in a car that collides with a train. And she becomes very obsessed with this accident in a very like online. She tracks different people who are connected to the accident. And there's some confusion about the accident. Also, it turns out to be a little closer to her family than she had understood at first. I won't say anything else about that because it's kind of a spoiler. But meanwhile, her dad is saying random stuff about the air conditioning, and it's very home. They're at home most of the time. And these are their two. It's a book about uncertainty and sort of the great romance of middle age, the ongoing love affair she's having with her entire family. This is not a proper love triangle, Akwaeke. I'm sorry to say, it's a very dull family love affair. All right, that's what I got.
I love that. I love that. And for those who haven't read Sandwich, you can read this as a stand. Like if I was reading through it and I'm like, okay, if I'd never read Sandwich, I would get the gist. That being said, you should read Sandwich because it makes it a lot. I don't want to use the word meatier, but I guess that's a good word. A lot more to
Yeah, but it is standalone. We did have a reader read it just for standaloneness, and sort of fixed anything that didn't have enough standalone qualities. So anyway, I hope you'll press it on your library patrons. I know you have bigger fish to fry, like wrestling your funding and dealing with all the people coming to you in need, but really excited for you to get it into your reader's hands. Thanks.
Thank you, Catherine.
Thanks,
I'm
Grace.
Lainey.
Okay, I am back. Thank you. This is just such a joy. I'm so glad everyone's here. So we're gonna bring on Gilly Macmillan, and we're gonna do a bio before we hear more about the Burning Library. Hi. I think you're muted. Can you hear me? Yeah.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Yay.
Thanks
Hello.
for being here.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you for inviting me.
Of course. I'm going to show your wonderful book jacket, and I'm gonna do a bio, and then we're gonna hear more about the book. So, Gilly Macmillan, author of The Burning Library, out November 18th. Gilly Macmillan is the internationally best-selling author of 8 novels, some of which include What She Knew and The Manor House. Both were Library Reads picks. So it would be eligible for Hall of Fame this time. I'm just throwing that out there. You also wrote The Nanny and To Tell the Truth and Long Weekend. And your new book, The Burning Library, will, like I said, be published November 18th. A former art historian and photographer, Gilly studied at Bristol University and the Courtauld Institute of Art in London. She lives in Bristol, UK, with her husband and 3 children. And I can't wait to hear more about your new book, The Burning Library.
Thank you, Lainey. This is the first time I've spoken about this book, so it's going to be fun. So I'm really excited to introduce it, especially to the library community who've been so phenomenally supportive of my work over the years. So as some of you may know, I usually write psychological thrillers, and this one is a little bit different. During the pandemic, my reading tastes shifted a little bit. I think I started to want to read stuff that was a little bit more escapist and a little bit more fun. And then I thought, well, if you want to read it, why don't you try to write it? So I thought back to books that I loved when I was younger, and things like Dan Brown's Da Vinci Code were huge influences for me. I just tore through books like that. I'm not ashamed to admit. I know some people are sniffy, but I'm not. I loved it, and I thought, well, why don't I try to write a book like that? So this book, The Burning Library, it's a sort of female version of a Dan Brown novel where my characters are all in pursuit of an ancient artifact. To be specific, an ancient manuscript, which is of enormous value to them. Um, I tried to come up with some interesting baddies. So I came up with 2 rival groups of women who are both seeking this artifact. And they're interesting because both these groups work for women's rights, but they do it in very different ways. So we have the Order of St. Catherine, who think that the way to support other women is to get married and exercise power behind the scenes through the men. And then we have the Fellowship of the Larks, who think it's much better idea to actually attain positions of power, that women should attain those positions themselves and exert power that way. So they are after a scrap of embroidery, which they think will lead to a manuscript. And it starts on a loch in Scotland. I've used some really fun locations. So we're in Scotland, we're in London, we're in Oxford, Cambridge, and Verona. Lots of fantastic escapist locations of kind of fun academia type settings. So a woman dies on the edge of a loch in Scotland, and she's been studying the scrap of embroidery, and all the action kicks off from there. And as that's happening, our heroine, who is called Dr. Anya Brown, and she is, of course, a brilliant young paleographer, which means she studies manuscripts and ancient writing. She's just been hired with a really, really attractive offer by an Institute of Manuscript Studies in St Andrews. And what she doesn't know is they're going to use her for their own ends, which is to find this manuscript that everybody is after. I loved writing this. It was such a fun book to write, and I have a background in art history, so of course I went down all kinds of research rabbit holes, and my family had to drag me back out and say, you do have to write. So that was super fun. But one of the really key moments was I was talking to my son about it. And I was talking about ancient manuscripts, and I'm slightly obsessed with the history of libraries and all these stories about how many libraries burned down and what happened to the books and how some of them were saved and some were not, and the kind of journeys they've taken through time and the secrets they might hold. And I was talking to my son about this, and he said, well, have you heard of the Voynich manuscript, which is really famous because nobody can translate it, and it's got this indecipherable language and all these extraordinary drawings in it. And it's actually held in America at Yale University. And I thought, well, you know what, maybe I could bring that in. And so I have. So the Voynich is also in the book. And it's really an homage to fun, escapist, sort of academia set books that I loved when I was younger, but hopefully with a little twist with the female groups as baddies. It was great fun to write, and I really hope it will be to read.
Yeah, thank you. I agree. I thought having the 2 groups of women were really fascinating as a thought experiment, and who could hold the power and who is correct, maybe. Or maybe it's a little of everything. It was really interesting. And you have such great quotes coming in. We have a great library journal one. B.A. Paris said, beautifully written, a story of dark obsession and murderous ambition, outstanding. The pages are turning, and I didn't know what was around the corner, so it was super fun too. But a little bit of that, it was really interesting as a thought experiment about the two groups of women too. I liked that
Yeah, it was fun to think about that. And my editor kept saying, you really have to make them be more nasty. You're being too British, she said. So that was fun.
you're like, okay,
Yeah, yeah. Sure.
fun. Thank you so much. We are going to bring everyone back on. So everyone turn their cameras back on. I think that now everyone in this chat, it is a crazy great chat. Everyone is so excited. They're all like, okay, we're just gonna leave now and go read all of these books right now. So thank you so much for telling us more about them. I wish you could see. It's really, you'll have to go back. It's a really great, enthusiastic chat. So some of the comments, let's see, before we get into some questions. A lot of people, there's Arkansas, Louisiana, Connecticut, Florida. I mean, everywhere. Someone said Spain.
I saw
Everyone,
Spain. I saw Nigeria. Lots of people in the chat from all
everyone's
over.
here.
Just
Um,
pro of doing it earlier in the day, I suppose.
yes, they're so excited. Yeah. And then let's see. People were like, Twice sounds great. Little Liar was excellent, Mitch. We have a lot of fans in the chat. And let's see. What's the first question? What do we want to get to, Grace? Let's see.
So we had questions. One of our friends emailed us a question earlier today,
Oh yeah.
for Mitch. Let me pull that up.
Beth Thomas. Yeah, I have it right here.
Got it? Okay.
So Beth Thomas, our friend, was so excited for this event. She emailed questions early for you, Mitch, because she listened to the audiobook and had such great things to say. She said, among some other questions, but she said the narration was so perfect for this story. Was it the publisher's suggestion you narrate, or was that something you knew you always wanted to do?
No, I'd love to say that, but the truth was, when Tuesdays with Morrie came out, it was such a nothing book, when it first was published, that we couldn't find anybody who was willing to do it. Normally they try to find an actor or some voice guy, and they came back to me and they said, "Well, we're really like not getting anybody to do it. Why don't you do it?" And I said, "Okay." And I'd never read a book before out loud, but I think maybe because Tuesdays with Morrie was about myself and Morrie, and I could do a pretty good Morrie impression, so I kind of did the two voices. It's almost like a play, and I guess it did well. And then from that point forward, they just keep asking me to read them, and I'd be fine if somebody else did, but they never. They just tell me, okay, now that you turn the book in, when are you going to read it? And I just assume it's that way. But I enjoy it because I find that actually this one I read before the final edit was due. And I was reading off of some, like the second pass or third pass. And when you read out loud with pace and you try to do the different characters, you you find that, like, that's a little long. That sentence is doesn't really have a good rhythm to it. And I would make notes while I was, actually recording it, and then I went back in and fixed it, or hope I fixed it. And so, I think it's a very good exercise if you can do it. And also, I had in Twice, the story is told at the end of the protagonist's life. He's an older guy and he's been arrested in the Bahamas for allegedly cheating to win millions of dollars at a roulette table. And the detective is kind of grilling him, and the detective is kind of this salty old, tired out Boston guy. And I went to college in Boston, and so I had to pick a voice, for this guy. And I was trying to think about, come on, you don't give me that, and all the pocket car stuff, and you end up sort of doing that voice, and then you find out if that voice actually does make sense as you've written it, and I ended up again just kind of shaving stuff because it didn't sound right. So It's a great experience. I recommend it for anybody who wants to do that work and but the truth is it wasn't like something I always wanted to do. I think they I think I'm cheap.
It's very interesting, though. Thank you, Beth, for sending those questions in. And if we have some time, we'll get to some more. But yeah, and for also a shout out to the audiobook. Thank you. That's an early audio e-galley for our librarians, so they can all access it. Okay, and Grace, I'm gonna hand to you.
Yeah, we have a question from Krista for Akwaeke who says, "You're my absolute favorite author. The way you definitely transform your writing to me and transcend any genre and incorporate culture and community in your writing is amazing. How do you juggle storytelling, how do you juggle telling the story coherently, meeting the reader's expectations for the genre, and incorporating certain elements without attempting too much in one project?"
Simple question.
I know. No,
Take
it's such
40
a good
minutes and answer that one.
no, it's such a good question. I do write in a lot of genres. I think the paranormal romance makes it six at this point. Um, and and I think for me, it's all just storytelling. But in large part, it's because I read in all the genres I write. So I never really worry about meeting another reader's expectations. I worry about meeting my own. I've been reading romance novels since I was in secondary school in Nigeria, and we were sneaking like Harlequin and Mills and Boon's novels like inside our textbooks because they were banned for being vulgar in school. And I've been reading fantasy um, ever since. So for me, it feels like I get to play in different playgrounds. I originally was meant to start my career in speculative fiction, but when I was a baby writer, I kind of took a look at the industry and made a little bit of a mercenary decision where I was like, oh, if I start in, speculative fiction, especially because I'm writing um, at the time my fancy was very like West African specific. I felt like I would get pigeonholed. It wasn't like the market is now, where after Tomi Adeyemi's work, you've got like a lot more West African fantasy. Back then, it was pretty much just mediocre Okorafo, and that was it. And so I looked around the industry and I was like, I want to be able to write for a living. What is the most prestigious genre to kind of start off in? And it was literary fiction, and I was like, okay, great, I'll just drop in from the top, start there, and then branch out. And that's kind of what I did. I wrote my first book, Freshwater, which is technically autobiographical, but we sold it as literary fiction. And then I moved into YA, and then did nonfiction, did poetry, did romance, started moving more towards more commercial genres, which was a few clutched pearls because some people do get snippy about certain genres. But I think, yeah, I'm trying to meet my expectations. And because I read so much into genres, I'm like, okay, these are the rules for the genre. Like in romance, you must have a happily ever after. And I feel like as long as I follow that rule, then I can play around with the rest of it. Um, I feel like I might have missed part of the question.
No, no, I think you did great.
Wonderful.
It was a big question, but it was it was a good one. So thank you for that. Um, we had a few people ask in the chat about everyone's titles, whether or not that was the first title they had, how that changed, what that title means to you. So if you all want to answer that, maybe round robin it, whoever is moved first can start.
Shall I go? I was working on some really early material for this new kind of book with an independent editor, and none of the material made it into the book. But as we were finishing up, she said, "I have a great, great title for you," and she came up with The Burning Library, and I was like, "Right, I have to meet that title now." So I was very lucky. It's not normally that easy.
Then if you don't, fine, but do you have anything to say about your title?
Um, I'll
Okay, go.
answer.
Yeah.
I My first novel was called The Five People You Meet in Heaven, and when I told my dad, who was alive at the time, that that's what I was going to call it, he said, "That's too many words." And I always started to become self-conscious about how many words were in the title, and I've shortened my titles as I've gone along, and then I got a one-word title. It's the first time I have a one-word title that not only is one word and would have made my dad happy in heaven, but is also the perfect word for this book, because that's it. And so I mean, sometimes they just come together. Titles are weird. I mean, I don't know, maybe it's the same for the other writers here. Sometimes it's so apparent before you that there's no other choice. Sometimes, like when you look at a kid and he's like a tough kid and his name Ralph, it's like, well, of course he's named Ralph, but then other times, you could think of 5 different titles that would work for a book, and that's really hard, because then which one do you choose? In this case, this just was perfect, and I'm happy. I hope my dad's happy somewhere, and I finally got a one-word title that's easy to remember.
I bet.
I've been picking my titles from songs fairly recently. So the romance novel was one of those that had a bit too many words. It's called "You Made a Fool of Death with Your Beauty," and it's a lyric from a song by Florence and the Machine.
Such
Um,
a title.
I loved it. I was like, we're gonna fit this on the cover somehow.
So beautiful.
And for Son of the Morning, I mean, obviously it's an obvious reference to Lucifer from the Bible, so technically, like, the origin is biblical. But there's a song, I think people are more familiar with, like, there's like a Jay-Z song where he uses a sample from an older reggae song by this guy named Max Romeo, and the name of the song is Chase the Devil. And the phrase that was sampled was, "Lucifer, Lucifer, son of the morning, I'm gonna chase you off the earth." And I loved it. It was just so eerie in a way, and I loved the sound of it. And I was like, well, that's who Lucifer is. He's the son of the morning. And I felt like it really spoke to where he came from, and his character in the book is portrayed as someone, who asked a bit too many questions in heaven and got booted for it. And there's a lot in there about just grief and the loss of, like, his heavenly family, and how he's trying to figure out how to run hell these days. But I felt like that remembering where he came from was so part of who he is now and part of what draws him to Galilee, that I thought it made the perfect title, if a bit on the nose.
I love that. I love that you use song lyrics in there. That's phenomenal. I mean, no art is created in a vacuum, so it makes a lot of sense. Catherine, we have a question for you. First of all, people are hoping to get more of Rocky and her family in a future book, so no pressure. But people are throwing that out there. But they were Kim said Willa was my favorite, hands down. Same. I love Willa. But then she asked how much of this book is based on your own experience or family, if at all.
None of it, not any of it. No, I'm kidding. It's like completely based on my whole life and family. Even though I know you're not really supposed to answer, so you're supposed to answer obliquely and be like, it might be, I don't know. Yeah, it's he was, I was a memoirist before I wrote fiction, and I'm listening to you world builders, and I am like so smitten, I would love to try that someday. Like, I read across genres, but I only write in this very kind of close auto fiction way still. So Hugh's pretty close. There's a lot of Willa, because Willa was around a lot, if you know what I mean. And the title, I was gonna say, although it's not, it really goes without saying, but we were trying to think of a title that contained both of the plot lines, the car wreck and Rocky being such a wreck, and hence wreck.
Totally cut you off with that title question. My bad.
No, not at all. Not at all. I didn't have anything that good about it. I just thought I'd pause.
And another one word title.
Yeah.
I know. I'm just trying to make Mitch's dad proud. Mitch's dad sounds like my dad, actually. Yeah.
I love that.
Um,
Thank you.
that's great. Okay, so I have a question for Jilly. So someone asked, and I know you've already talked about like your background, but they said what fascinated you with ancient manuscripts while studying art? And I don't know if there's anything else you want to talk about. Maybe even things other people might not have known how to look for. I find that fascinating. Like where do you begin? Where do you start when you're researching?
So I had a general interest, but just because of my background, which was mostly in modern art, what I studied, but I always felt like I was sort of missing out, because you can't study it all, and I wanted to. So the first thing I did was book a tour of the Bodleian Library at Oxford University. And I got to go in with a group of people, and curators brought out their favorite manuscripts, and they were from all different eras and places. And each curator had a really specific thing that made him absolutely obsessive about this one particular manuscript. They had a bestiary, and they had some Japanese scrolls, and they had some letters from Winston Churchill, one of the guys. And I just got that feeling that you get when you speak to collectors, that kind of bug people get, that sort of obsession with certain objects, especially objects that might hide secrets or knowledge. That whole world has always fascinated me. So that's where I started, and they took us around the ancient library, which was absolutely brilliant. I'd never been in there before, and it's really, really old. It's sort of 14th century or thereabouts. So it was just gorgeous. It really was. And it was in the evening, so it was all atmospheric and just what you want if you're writing a novel in that world.
That sets the tone for sure. Someone in the chat, I think, is when you were talking at the beginning, it says, as long as women hold the power, I don't care how they get it, which made me laugh.
Fair.
But it just made me laugh. That's true. Okay, Grace, what are we not? I mean, there's just so many great comments. I wish I could just read the comments too.
Yeah, there's so many people are so excited about these books. We were getting a lot of like emails ahead of time too, just talking about how pumped they were about this event in particular. So um yeah, I think we are about 5 minutes out from 6. Lainey, do we want to ask our final question?
Yes, so everyone always wants to know, and we can do an either or thing. What are you working on next? Or either or and you can do whatever. What are you working on next? And what are you reading right now and loving or recently read and loving? Let's start with Jilly.
So what I'm working on next is a follow-up to the Burning Library, but it's still a chaotic mess of a plot, so I can't give you any more details. I've just finished this John Crow's Devil by Marlon James, and my daughter's been telling me to read that for years, and I should have, because it was absolutely brilliant. It blew me away, and I can't stop thinking about it. So I recommend it to everybody.
Thank you. Also, as always, everyone, I'm putting these in an Edelweiss catalog, and I'll send that out after. So
Okay, next on my screen is Catherine. So
I don't know what I'm working on. I'm definitely doing some writing, but it feels very preliminary. And I just read a book that a really good friend of mine from college wrote, and it's called The Salt Stones. And it's going to sound really improbable, so just bear with me. It's a book about her life in Vermont as a shepherd. And it's a book about daughterhood and motherhood and tending this flock of, I think it's like 600 sheep. And it's just completely incredible. I loved it about the land. It sounds like you would sort of suffer through it and you'd feel like good about yourself for having read it, but that's not what it's like at all. It's like a page turner, a flock sheep themed page turner, The Saltstones.
I love it. Okay. Mitch?
I tend to take a big break after I finish a book. Usually I have a lot of other things going, and So I'm not even gonna make up something that I'm working on something else. I literally just got the ink off of my hands off of Twice, and then sometimes I work on, and Twice actually has, it's the first time this ever happened, but was sold as a movie and already has a director and a writer and everything before it even came out. And a lot of times, in the past, I've sort of written the book, and then sometimes I work on a screenplay of the book before I start working on another book, which is, I don't know, it's just it feels to me like I'm working on something different. I'm able to like work on different muscles, and then my other muscles, my novel muscles, come back to me because they're exhausted. But right now I'm just resting those muscles, and so I have to wait, and as far as what I'm reading, actually, I'm reading something probably all of you who've probably read, but I never did. I run an orphanage in Haiti, and I'm there every month, and I brought some guys down with me about a week ago who had never been there before to help fumigate a place with mold. And it's a long story. You don't want to hear it, but anyhow, this guy thanked me afterwards, and I said, and he said, I said, I know it was really small and really weird to be down there. I'm sure it was very tough, and he said, well, there's this Tolstoy book called Family Happiness that basically is the whole premise of it is that you can draw your happiness from the smallest of little places and intimate people. And I'd never read it, and so now I'm in the middle of reading it. It's really kind of interesting, and you wouldn't think that Tolstoy would have anything to do with an orphanage in Haiti, but it does. Like he was right. You don't expect that from a guy who does mold for a living either. That's not just generally where you get your literary suggestions. But I took it, so that's what I happen to be reading this morning.
Nice. Okay, Akwaeke.
I have so much respect for screenwriters. It's a completely different beast. Son of the Morning is in actually secretly in development as a TV series, and I was working on the pilot at first because I had done it for my book Freshwater, and about halfway through the process, I was like, I just don't want to do this anymore. I was like, I prefer books. I just want to go work on my fantasy novel. And I took a step back, sort of finding someone else for that. And it honestly felt like such a relief because I was like, it's a different kind. I find it to be a very different kind of like collaborative process than working with an editor and with, at least in my experience, a little less agency, and a lot of trying to predict what Hollywood language actually wants from you, which I'm very bad at. I'm like, I like it to be very direct. Tell me exactly what you want, and I will just do it. But I'm working now on my next book, which is my first adult fantasy novel. It's called Eclipse and the Wolf, and it is coming out next year. And yeah, we're in edits right now. So, and it's been really fun. I think I've waited a long time to work in adult fantasy, and to really kind of dig into that world building. It's also the longest book I've ever written. I think the word count is currently like 165,000 words. So it's a very tedious editing process, but I'm having fun because there's a magic system and I get to world build and everyone is slightly psychotic. And and because I'm working, once I'm in like in the middle of like a heavy edit, I tend to read kind of lighter to counterbalance it. So I'm not reading a book in particular, but I am working through the entire body of work of Eloisa James, who's a romance writer. And I read pretty fast. I think it takes me like 2 to 3 hours to finish a book. So I'm like reading a romance novel a day and then working in fantasy at night, which feels like a perfect balance for me.
Thank you. She had a book come out earlier this year, so I'll put that one in the suggestions. So thank you so much.
I can't believe it's been an hour. Mitch, I would say if I had the twice power, I'd go back and relive this wonderful hour, but I don't want anything to change. So I won't do that because I thought it was just perfect. And thank you so much for taking the time to be here. I know I'm telling you, everyone's so excited for all of your books. If they haven't read it already, they're downloading it now on as an e-galley. And so we're going to stay on and do some housekeeping. But before I want to say thank you so much to our authors, and quickly, Twice goes on sale October 7th. We have Son of the Morning on sale November 4th. Then we have Rec on sale October 28th. And The Burning Library on sale November 18th. So go download, enjoy, and thank you so, so much. Have a wonderful night, everyone.
Thank you.
Hi, thank you.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye.
Thanks, everyone.
Okay, and I'm going to share the photos of all of the books. I'm sorry, I meant to do that while I was talking, but multitasking is just not I think tonight, I guess. So here are all of the covers. They're lovely. And hi, librarians. It's us and Grace, you and us, me and Grace, and you, and we're so excited to be here. Grace, do you want to talk a little bit about tomorrow's event? We have another author, let me share it, another author event. That's our one major housekeeping. Don't forget
Yeah.
to come.
For sure. Sorry, Lainey, I knocked off your screen sharing by accident.
Like,
So
oh, okay.
back. We're back. So tomorrow at 2 p.m. Eastern time on Crowcast or Facebook, we're going live for a book club snug. We're telling you all about why these thriller slash mysteries will be great for your book club. We have The Winner by Teddy Wayne, The Retirement Plan, Sue Hinsenberg's, and The Felon's Ball by Polly Stewart. So we're very pumped about that. And it'll be a really good time.
Yeah, be sure to come, bring your questions. Okay, so before we leave, this has been a really wonderful, spirited conversation. Thank you so much for coming and showing the love to these authors and the love to us. We love you guys. We appreciate you. We do have one update, and I'm gonna read this, and then we're gonna bid you adieu. Virginia Stanley is no longer with HarperCollins. She asked us to thank you all for everything you've done to support our authors and our efforts to get the word out about their books. I'll be your best contact going forward, and I hope that you'll be in touch with any request, questions, comments about our titles. Let us know, and thank you, and stay well.
Thank you all, and we hope you have a great night. Thank you.